President of the United States wants the American people to give him the same attention that the North Korean people are forced to give their leader. Let's just take a moment to look at some of the atrocities documented about Kim Jong-un's regime. According to a 400-page UN report, at least 120,000 people, men, women, and children, are being held in the 4 known political prisons, according to Amnesty International. Former detainees in those camps say they were stripped of all sense of being human. There is no thinking, no free will, just fear. That's a quote. Detainees caught rats to eat. They were beaten by guards if caught with contraband, cigarettes. Some died from the wounds from those beatings. Starvation just isn't an issue in the camps. The regime uses starvation as a means of control, distributing food to those considered useful to the government. One famine in the late 1990s killed an estimated 1 million people. You want this for your people, Donald Trump? According to the New York Times, since taking power in 2011, Kim Jong-un has consolidated his power by using executions. Citing the Institute for National Security Strategy, the New York Times says, quote, in the first 6 years as leader, he has ordered the executions of at least 340 people. Kim's own family is not spared his brutality and executions. The same Times report says, quote, one of Kim's uncles was convicted of treason and then executed with anti-aircraft machine guns. His body incinerated with flamethrowers. The U.S. also says there's evidence that North Korea was responsible for killing Kim's estranged brother last year at an airport with a chemical warfare agent known as VX. You want that for your people, Donald Trump? Is that why you want Americans to sit up and listen to you? Trump is not ignorant of that oppression. Quoting his own words, Trump has said, quote, an estimated 100,000 North Koreans suffer in gulags, toiling in forced labor and enduring torture, starvation, rape, and murder on a constant basis, end quote, from the President of the United States. So it's interesting that President Trump now says he has great respect for this North Korean leader. He wants his people to do the same as North Koreans. Sit up and listen to a strong leader. Minutes after saying he wanted the American people to sit up in attention like they do in North Korea, here is how the president tried to clarify his comments.
What did you mean just now when you said you wished Americans would sit up at attention when you...
I'm kidding. You don't understand sarcasm.
Oh, it was all a joke. Okay, well, then it's okay. NBC's Geoff Bennet is live at the White House. Also with us is MSNBC terrorism analyst Malcolm Nance. Malcolm, I just want to start with you because you are a military man from a military family with generations. You are taught to sit up straight and listen to your commander-in-chief. This is something entirely different.
It absolutely is. And in my family, we were taught to sit up and pay attention and, salute the flag so that other Americans could have the freedom and liberty to do as they please. However, that being said, anyone who is in the service of this nation, particularly the President of the United States, must not only understand that, they must execute that faithfully for the other citizens of the United States. I don't believe that Donald Trump understands what his role is. He sees that sitting with a murderous, brutal dictator is the equivalent of bringing that dictator to our way of thinking. That's not true. It's the other way around. We are seeing him emulate and show envy of that dictator at the time that he should be showing decorum and honor.
Geoff, one of the things that the president said this morning is that, what am I supposed to do? In fact, his quote is, what am I supposed to do? Walk out and say terrible, mean things? I get along with him very well. I've got good chemistry. I asked him about the remains. He brought back the remains of, he gave back the remains of great heroes. What's the strategy here? What's he trying to do? It's just not clear to the American people listening to Donald Trump what he's trying to achieve in praising Kim Jong-un, who he raised to a new level of insult in past months.
That's right. And I think it should be said that the U.S. and Western allies, Ali, for decades have often turned a blind eye to totalitarian regimes around the world, often in the interest of U.S. stability, often at the expense of people living in those countries. But American leaders, up until this point, have so often been very careful about the words they use to refer to those leaders as a way of trying to maintain some semblance of a moral high ground. And yet, the president, having just returned from these talks with Kim, has referred to him as funny, smart, very talented, and said he loves his people, even though we know that Kim is an accused human rights abuser. But take a listen to what else he had to say about the personal chemistry, as he put it, between him and Kim in this interview he gave to Fox News this morning.
When you finally met him and sat across the table from him, you know, we've heard a lot of bad things about Rocket Man, and suddenly you guys seem to be best friends.
We got along very well. We had a good chemistry. I don't know if that's supposed to be popular or politically correct to say, but we really did. We had good chemistry. You haven't had any rockets shot up in the air for 7 months. You haven't had any research. They just blew up their test site. They're blowing up their engine test site for ballistic missiles. He's giving us back our great heroes who died, as you know. We're getting the remains back.
So what accounts for all of this? I can tell you people close to the president say he is intent on selling this as a victory. The president even said today, I did a great job this weekend. So setting aside, of course, the fact that North Korea hasn't agreed to a timeline or even whether they'll hand over the regime's weapons as U.S. officials want.
So, Malcolm, let's just discuss this. I don't think anybody should take issue with the fact that in attempting to negotiate with North Korea, whatever it takes, if you need to develop good chemistry. I mean, I do remember that after the Iran deal, the President Obama praised the deal and the hard work that went into it and the work that the Iranians put into it. He didn't praise Iran's leaders, by the way. He emphasized the verification part of this. But I think Americans would be understanding of the fact that there's a middle ground to walk. The problem is this president hasn't walked a middle ground. He said inflammatory things about North Korea's leader that had many Americans worried that he was going to trigger a nuclear war, and now he seems all chummy with him. I understand that it's complicated to be president, and you've got to walk a middle line when you're negotiating, but what is an approach that would make sense?
An approach that would make sense is the adult approach, which means that the actual legwork, which has to be done so that when we speak to a totalitarian murderous dictator, that it is done with a unified body of speech that represents the entirety of the United States. Donald Trump, in his approach, represents Donald Trump in his, transactional way of doing business with people. We do not do business with murderous dictators as the United States on an off-the-cuff basis. This was almost the equivalent of Neville Chamberlain going to Germany in 1939 and saying, hey, Adolf Hitler, he's a great guy. We sat around, we drank schnapps. Maybe we should just keep doing business with him. Kim Jong-un is going to keep those nuclear weapons. This whole thing is going to fall apart because if he doesn't, Kim Jong-un could end up dead. Or even worse, his own regime could kill him, and this entire deal will die with him.
What do we make, Malcolm, about the suspension of the military exercises? And it may be a good thing that we've done that. It may bring the pressure down, but it does seem to a lot of observers that we gave something up that Kim Jong-un wanted, and it is unclear what we got in return. The president tweeted the other day that there's no nuclear threat from North Korea, but expert after expert after expert has come on and said there's no evidence that there's no nuclear threat from North Korea. We don't even have a proper count of how many nuclear weapons they have. Again, I remind people, Iran had verifiably 0 nuclear weapons, and it took us 10 years to get a deal with them. We don't have a full count of what North Korea has. So saying that there's no threat in North Korea is patently false.
The president said today that he unilaterally gave up strategic exercises with our allies in South Asia and in Asia because he wanted to get rid of it anyway, because it was costing us money. That leads me to believe that he doesn't even understand the fundamental basics of how the defense of this nation works. We spend that money so that our sons, our daughters, our brothers and sisters, husbands and wives do not have to die in combat. When a surprise, like let's say a North Korean attack, comes out at us. These things are insurance. We have been insuring the stability of the Korean Peninsula since 1954 when the ceasefire went into effect. If we could end that, that is great. I will never take that away from anybody. But right now, the president has to understand that what he's done is he has disarmed us. And if these exercises actually do stop, we will immediately degrade our ability to defend all of our interest in Asia, not just the Korean Peninsula.
Malcolm, thanks for your analysis on this. As always, Malcolm Nance and Geoff Bennet.